Hey Covalence friends, got a fun one for us today. So, I want to see if we can automate, in the loosest terms, solving Wordle utilizing Selenium. And if you don't know what Selenium is, you're in for a treat. So, Selenium is a browser automation tool. It allows us to have full control over a either graphical or headless browser in case you're just running some bare bones code on a server without a graphical environment. And it gives us full unfettered control of a web browser. So we can use it to, if you would like to create automated tests for your application to ensure that your DOM tree works exactly as expected, or if instead of testing, if you want to scrape a bunch of data in an automated fashion, perfect use case. Or even if you have a lot of manual repetitive tasks that you have to do, that too is a perfect use case. So, let's go ahead and see if we can use it to solve Wordle. I don't really play Wordle all that much as a preface, but as a software developer, we're always curious to how these applications run under the hood. And just so it happens, they receive that data via a network request. That data contains the answer. So we can use a network request to extract out the answer. Easy peasy, but I want to take it a step further and use Selenium to actually type it in on the screen automatically for us. So let's see if we can do just that. I'm going to init a new app here, and we are going to initialize it as a TypeScript app as well, because it's 2022, almost 2023. Use TypeScript for everything. It's so good, and it makes your code even better. So please, for the sake of all of us, use it. So I'll open up VS Code, and I'm going to go ahead and install the Selenium WebDriver. Oh boy, if I can type. And its associated types. Oh my goodness. There we go. All right. As it's installing everything, I'm going to throw up our index.ts and get started. So I need to import from the Selenium WebDriver module the builder class. The builder class is going to allow us to construct a new driver instance, driver being the term they use to designate the browser. So like I said earlier, we can actually have all of this code execute headlessly just in the background, but this is a video demonstration, so we're not going to make it headless. I'm going to make it show up on screen so we can see it clicking everything for us. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Async function solve it. We're going to write an async function and immediately invoke it, just so I can use await. Although I am using a newer version of Node to where I can use top level await, I think. I want to keep this code compatible for anybody else watching who either doesn't have or can't install newer versions of Node. So we've got an asynchronous function defined, and we're going to go ahead and have everything error handled immediately just so we can get that taken care of. I'll leave the full error trace out here. I was going to initially just do the message, but I might screw something up with Selenium, so I might as well have the entire thing logged out so we can debug it a little more quickly. So as far as the scraping of the data goes, let's go ahead and extract that first, since it's just a quick JSON, response that their API provides. I actually forget the URL of that, so let me go pull that up in the browser. Let's see. Okay. So that is the form that their data takes on in their, let's see, API, and this is what it provides. So spoiler alert, by the way, tomorrow's clue, or if you're already watching this, today's clue, is braid. So I guess I should probably put that in the title or something. The cool thing about this as well is they actually release a few weeks worth of clues ahead of time. So you can actually make your own just for loop and iterate over the date and get, well, this is going to be Saturday's clue, and so on and so forth. But we're dealing with actually solving today's clue. So if you wanted to compile a list, you could create a date object and use, that date object dot set date equal to this date plus 1 to increment that date, and then use that to rebuild this URL string. The URL string is going to be a little weird just because this is an ISO format, but if I try to get my ISO date, it's not going to line up with my current timestamp with my locale date. And since they actually evaluate like the board you have based on the locale date, I do need to instantiate today's date using a locale string, because my ISO string would actually show tomorrow's date with GMT. So, programming time zones, always a bunch of fun. But I'm going to say const today equals new date. And then if I do toLocale string, it's going to return a string of, let's see, 12 dot, and I'll have this as Friday's date. It's going to put it in this format just because that's the US format, which sucks, ISO 8601 for sure for everything, but this is how the common EN US standard is. I'll have to do some parsing here with the split method to rearrange these, which is not that bad. The thing that's worse here is the lack of leading zeros. So if it were January through September, basically any month that's not October, November, December, where it's just a singular digit month, we'd have the truncated, leading zero from the month as well. So we can actually use a couple arguments with the toLocale string options object in order to get that leading zero prefaced in the string. So I'm going to go back to that. We'll provide the options object here, where the year will keep as a standard 4-digit numeric type. Then for the day, we'll have, instead of numeric, which is just 9, 2-digit would give us 0, 9. And then we'll do the same thing with month as well, just to make this, compatible with whenever you're executing this code. So this will give us a string of 12/09/2022. Now if I execute the split method on it here and say split the string upon every slash, that's going to return an array over here of a string 12, string 09, string 2022. So we can just array destructure these out and then reassemble them. So I would say this is month, that's day, and this is year. So the joys of array destructuring. And then I can just kind of reassemble that into a date in ISO format, but with the locale date. Excuse me, sorry about that. So we'll have the 4-digit year interpolated with a hyphen after it, and then the 2-digit month, and then right after it, the 2-digit day. And now that we have that, we can now construct our URL with this dynamic date within it. So I like how this is a Selenium video, and I've spent most of our time on date processing thus far. So let's see. Okay. And if you're using Node version 18 or greater, you can actually now use their own fetch API. So Node has finally implemented a fetch API natively, You don't have to use the HTTPS module anymore to make your own manual requests, nor do you have to install kind of some third-party API like Axios or Bluebird. You can just use fetch, and it is behaviorally pretty much the same as the implementation that most web browsers utilize. So it's very nice that you can use that standardized code between the same two ecosystems. So I'll just fetch our URL, and then let me go back and pull over our browser. And so this object has a solution property, so that's what we will extract out. So const solution equals await res.json. And then I want the solution, that's going to be our string, but I want that as individual characters because we're going to use that for DOM selection with Selenium. So let me go ahead and break that up into an array of keys. And then finally we can get back into some Selenium code. So we'll go ahead and split this at every character, giving us an array of keys. All right. Actually, let me save my code. And let's see if it can execute fetch. Cool. So it has grabbed infer as the clue of the day, and it has given us the keys as this array of individual characters. Great. So let's go ahead and actually get into some Selenium logic. So with Selenium, we have to create a new driver instance with that builder. The driver is just what we call like the handler for the browser itself. So we'll say driver is equal to, let's see, new builder dot. We need to specify like which browser we're going to use. I'm just going to use my Firefox binary just because that's my default browser of choice. You can use whatever browser you've got installed. And then we're going to go ahead and build it. Let's see, I believe that is that asynchronous? Nope, it's not. Okay. Virtually everything in this library is asynchronous, so just be cognizant of that. And that's what TypeScript is also really good for, because if you're utilizing just JavaScript and you're not paying attention, well, tough luck. You'll at least get some type errors if you're trying to use something that's thenable, but you haven't, awaited it or used a dot then chain. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and load up their website, which does not follow this URL. Hold on a sec. Of course, it's the Googleified URL. NewYorkTimes.com/game/WORDLE. Cool. Nifty. All right. So let's go ahead and have Selenium launch for us. We've just told Selenium to go ahead and load up the page. We haven't told it to do anything whatsoever yet. We just have it loading up the page. So let's get it to launch. We haven't told it to like quit either, to like shut down. So it's just going to hold the browser open until I actually like shut it down. All right. Let's see. We've got a little modal that we'll have to tell it to dismiss. Let's see. And the site is built with React, so everything's not going to load like instantaneously. It's going to kind of slowly build. And then we have components like as the data comes in from their API, as they hydrate their Redux store tree, they might like conditionally render additional components. So execution might be a little kind of weird here, and that's the fun of DOM scraping. You just don't know what you're gonna get. So we'll just click on the document body via Selenium and have it hit like the escape key or something to dismiss that modal. So body is equal to await driver. And with Selenium, we're going to have a lot of the same kind of concepts with selecting elements. So we're obviously not going to use the same syntax, but conceptually speaking, we're going to be utilizing the same kind of selectors. We're going to use ID selectors or class selectors, or we can use their CSS selector, aka a query selector. So we'll use find element, and they have another class by, which allows us to choose all of the various class methods of how to find an element. So say by CSS, and they don't have like a tag name selector specifically, which is why I'm using the CSS selector here for the body tag. But and then you can type out like a specific key. So like I could say like press the letter A, and like this would be great if you were like if this was an input you needed to type something into, and you said like, you know, if you wanted an input to say subscribe to our YouTube channel, or if you wanted to make an anchor have the link of, you know, covalence.io, you know, you could do just that. For the escape key though, it's not just the string escape. We actually have a key enum here that we need to use to get some special meta keys. So key.escape. Okay, let's see if we can get Selenium to automatically dismiss that modal for us. So we'll go ahead and rerun that data. I should, after this run, disable the fetch. Yeah, just because we don't, I mean, we know that's working right now. I don't need that extra networking delay as we're testing. Let's see. I'm going to put this on a small delay. Let's see. So we'll put this on like a 2-second delay just to allow their application to build up its tree and hydrate its store and conditionally render any elements that it needs to. I think 2 seconds is more than generous, but we might have to play around with that. So that's just a fun part about DOM scraping, is you're going to be hitting up pages that kind of partially hydrate, so you don't really have a consistent expected schedule of when you can access and extract items. So driver needs to be a global element, so let me declare that here, and its type is Venable WebDriver. Okay. So let's go ahead and import that type, and thankfully I don't have to because VS Code's going to auto-suggest it. All right, so we've got our global global driver variable. That's a fun little tongue twister. Global driver variable. Global blah, blah, blah. Y'all try that and tell me how many times in the comments you can say that in 5 seconds, because I would probably say 2 for me. So we have this set timeout after 2 seconds, executing this handle keyboard event function, and let's see if that will get us our modal to be dismissed. And the keyboard appears to be present before the modal launches. Yes, cool. So we don't have to do anything weird for the keyboard. And I mean, we've got the function named as like handle keyboard events, so I might as well just like type everything there. Although I need scope of the keys, and I don't want to have to send it as a function argument. Well, I guess it's not too bad. All right, so we finally have that modal being dismissed. Let's see if we can find those buttons. Let's see, and the incoming keys are a string array. And we're going to have to loop over each key. And I'll just find every element and press it within each iteration of the loop. So we'll need an asynchronous for loop. So for await const key of keys. And we're going to find each individual key using another element finder. So we'll say const I use this variable key here. I'll call this like key button or key div or key span. We'll have to go batoon. We'll have to go check out the DOM and see what exactly these elements are. So come over here, click. And this is on like an impossibly like 2 pixel sized view, so let me zoom in on this. We've got some buttons. That's what these keyboard keys appear to be. Okay. Looks like we've got top row, middle row, bottom row. All buttons with this key module, key RVVP class. I don't know what kind of like CSS toolkit they're utilizing, how it's getting generated. So I'm gonna use the data key attribute because I don't know what styling like this key does. I'm assuming it's that gray background, but there could also be like these are buttons likely. Yeah, so we've got some buttons here. They don't look like they have. They look like they have very distinct classes, but still the safer attribute is going to be using the button, using a query selector with the button element with the data key, because I can search for the direct like attribute of which key. I don't have to do any like finding of all the keys and then doing some kind of like filtration logic. So we're going to stick with just the query selector equivalent. We're just going to use a CSS selector. So we'll do await driver dot find element. We'll say by dot CSS. We'll give it a CSS selector string here. So we're going to look for a button element with, go check out that data attribute again. It's data hyphen key. I don't trust myself to type anything in ever, so I'm going to copy paste that. And this is just going to be the exact value of whatever key is. So let's go ahead and interpolate that there. And that should find each respective key for us. And then let's see if we can get it to type out the answer. So this is kind of the exciting step. We had a lot of setup just to really get to this stage, but fingers crossed we don't encounter any further roadblocks. All right, 2 seconds, dismiss modal. And it didn't find an element likely. Let's see. Let's look at our output here. Oh, you know what? Let's see. I think my loop may have begun before we dismiss the modal. Okay. So it's saying that the initial button, let's see. It's not saying like the full element here with all of its attributes, unfortunately, but I would assume that is the lowercase I button. But it's saying it's not clickable because another element dialog, which this looks like that modal. It's got, modal as a few class names in there. So yeah, I just need to await that, let that finish, and hopefully that solves that. All right. Lots of just waiting and reloading in this, but hopefully it'll all be worth it. We'll see. Dismiss. Crud. Okay, so is there a... It looks like the... I've got like 8 copies of the app now because I haven't told WORDLE to quit. Or I haven't told Selenium to shut down the browser after I'm done. So I have to manually Alt F4 them. It looks like the buttons are present before the dialog comes. So once I dismiss that, if I click anywhere on the body and hit escape, that dialog element should be gone. Maybe that dismissal sets an animation that... Okay, I think that animation is also screwing this up because it doesn't remove the element entirely immediately. It animates away. So we might have to do kind of another induced delay here. And so this needs to be an asynchronous callback function in our set timeout. All right, let's see if this maybe is hopefully long enough for that to disappear. So page load, initial set timer goes off, dismisses, 2 seconds later. Yes, there we go. Okay, and finally, all we have to do now, once that loop finishes execution, is hit enter. Oh man, this is great. This is fantastic. And for the enter button, it's going to be yet another button, but I'm assuming it's got that data key attribute. Yep, and it looks like they've got like the Unicode return key there. So all I have to do is do that, enter button, and here I'm going to cut that. All right, and finally, hands up in the air. Well, actually, I need one hand to move my window over. I don't know why it automatically resizes halfway off the screen. Yes, and there we go. We have it, ladies and gentlemen. We have our WORDLE solving bot. So I know solving's a bit of a misnomer when we can scrape that data just straight from their API, but the cool part is that we had this happen automatically hands-free, relatively speaking. So this is just one of the many teeny tiny applications we could use Selenium for. I hope you enjoyed learning about Selenium, and if you have any questions or if you'd like me to do any other Selenium stuff in a further video, please go ahead and leave a comment. And if you haven't subscribed to us yet, go ahead and subscribe so that way you can get notified whenever we have future videos about cool stuff just like this. But catch y'all later.